Coming up today on the Locked On Hornets podcast, we're going to take a break from the losing streak for at least a couple of segments. Nata Edwards of the Ion College Basketball Podcast joins us to talk about some NBA draft prospects all today on LOH.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free. We're available anywhere you get your podcast, and that does include YouTube. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. There's Doug Branson. You can find him on his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. He's back after taking the day off yesterday because he didn't want to talk about the losing streak. Again, I completely understand. I can't even blame him for it. He did do Locked On NBA, though. I'm Walker Mail. You can listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3. And last, but certainly not least, we saved the best for last. It's Nata Edwards, Ion College Basketball producer. You can find him on Twitter at Nata the Scribe. Nata, we appreciate the time. My man, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I figured let's talk about some draft. Let's talk about some hopefulness. Let's talk about some sunshine, because there clearly hasn't been much in the Hornets land for at least, 2 weeks?
I don't know if any of it. Look, Doug, I know the joke, not so joke, is that you don't listen to the show unless you're on it. But yesterday was a pretty dark show all around. Like, I listened back to it and I was like, where's the sunshine? I didn't bring that. I don't like not bringing any sunshine, not bringing any light to a podcast, but you can't lose 3 games by a combined 131 and let the light in, man. The light is a train at the end of the tunnel. There's no escape.
So I definitely did not listen to the episode, but I did read through some of the transcript because I needed to do some show notes and I needed to look at the transcript for that. And I was surprised at just how dark it got.
Got real dark, and I apologize for those people. This is why we're going to look at the future. We're going to be looking for hope. Doug was right.
Honestly, I was surprised because I was like, wait, I didn't do this show, right? I'm pretty sure that's a lot of it sounded like me. And I was like, I don't think I did the show.
We were born in it. We were both born in it. I just let it show maybe a little bit more infrequently than you do. Let's talk about some hope here. Let's talk about the NBA draft with Nata, who is the producer of the College Basketball Podcast out there. It seems like it's been Cooper Flagg, separation, Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, VJ Edgecombe, then maybe separation. Is that still how you see it? If we want to lump in tier 1 and the 3 guys in tier 3, has anything changed in the top 4, if you will, or just within the separation of the top 4?
I would tell you that I would probably put Dylan Harper closer to Cooper Flagg, and I would put both the Rutgers boys quite literally in the same tier as Cooper Flagg at this point. I think.
Damn.
And last time I was on, I told you that I had Dylan Harper slid down because of positional fit. I have now rethought that. This last little losing streak has kind of put where if Dylan Harper's there at 2, I'm pretty sure I'm probably taking Dylan Harper at 2 over Ace Bailey at this point. Positional fit be damned. No one has earned the benefit of the doubt at this point to where you don't draft Dylan Harper because someone happens to be there, even if they make $50 million a year.
Go ahead, Doug. You had the reaction. Why the reaction from you? Just spicy takes from Nata? What are you interested in?
No, I'm just happy whenever anyone comes over to my side, whenever anyone visits my island of you cannot draft for positional fit if you haven't won a playoff series in multiple decades in 4 presidential administrations. I'm sorry, you cannot do that. You just have to draft the best player available. So if that's Dylan Harper at 2, then so be it. I don't think there should be any more consulting or any more phone calls or any more anything. Just draft the best player. What I want to know is what about Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey in your mind separates them from VJ Edgecombe? Is that more about VJ or is that more about what the Rutgers boys have been doing?
That's more about the potential, the ceiling of. That's a lot more about the ceiling. The ceiling on Ace Bailey is I'm not going to say Kevin Durant because that's a little bit too high, a little too rich for my blood. But I would say the ceiling on a Ace Bailey is probably closer to just he's going to be a top probably 11, 12 guy in the league if he hits his ceiling. The floor is still pretty high. The floor is probably healthy Michael Porter Jr., which is still borderline all-star. So you're talking about a guy that can be very, very impactful. Someone compared Dylan Harper to me I had a comp to James Harden, and I don't necessarily disagree. I think he's much more in line with a 6'5" Kyrie, but at the same point, those kind of talents are the type that you absolutely drafted to. Where VJ Edgecombe, where I would probably put him closer to with his athleticism, with his jumper still being what it is, he's closer to an Indiana Oladipo. Like, still very, very impactful, but not the ceiling that those other two guys have at this point.
I went on with Ovius and Giglio probably with the last 3 weeks, and we were talking about Cooper Flagg, what he would mean to Charlotte, and they said he's not necessarily a franchise changer, that they don't see him as that way, and that's what I was going to ask, if is he a franchise changer, and why might they think that, though? Like, how does this go wrong if Cooper Flagg doesn't reach his potential, his biggest heights? Doug, you got something?
Wait, Nata, before you answer that, I'm curious, Walker, what was their main point about Cooper Flagg not being Well, no, it was just in passing. Well, we're talking about this, right? And we're talking about something completely different. And then they talked about how they didn't view him as a franchise changer, and then we moved on to the next question.
No.
So, I just wonder.
No.
I wonder if that has to do with the Hornets. Like, come on, boy,
yes,
you got to really be a franchise.
No. That guy's here's the thing. He's got the temerity. He's a jerk, and I'm using that for the parents because I want to use another word to describe him. But he's absolutely got the temerity to be the star. He controls everything about that. He's not one of those guys that Brandon Miller is going to have to yell at to go back and defend. He's going to defend. He does quite literally everything well. And on top of that, that man will sell tickets and jerseys to everybody from Greensboro all the way down to Spartanburg. That man is a franchise changer in multiple ways. Let's not get this twisted. He is a 18-year-old kid that leads every single statistical category as a freshman for the number 2 team in the land. Franchise changer that's the one guy I am sure of is a franchise changer in this draft. The other two, they're probably it, but with Cooper Flagg, I put it in Sharpie. With everybody else, I put that in maybe a little bit of pencil. That's it.
The jersey sales, is that the Christian McCaffrey effect?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's why I wanted Lad
McConkey. What are we
here.
talking? Wait, the Christian, he was a very good player.
Star
You're
power.
right.
Talking about star power. That's why. Yeah, you're good. You have one more question, Doug? Yeah, this looks like a guy you can have a beer with. That's it. Go ahead.
Have either of you, the host on Ion College Basketball Podcast, cast any doubt on Cooper Flagg's ability to change a franchise? And further, I mean, you pay attention to the landscape of the conversations around college basketball. If there is a single argument that he would not do it, what do you know what that argument would be? Even I know you don't believe it, but what would that argument be?
I haven't heard it. I've had conversations with damn near everybody. The only person that they put with Cooper Flagg is Ace Bailey. Quite literally. That's the only guy that scratches that surface. The only person anyone's willing to put him with. Now, granted, if we want to start talking about 2026, there are 2 guys in that draft that are willing to have, but that's a completely different story. That's a whole lot more darkness. We're not going to go there.
Oh, I just did a tankathon. Very first try of the show. Charlotte Hornets move up 2 spots to number 1 overall. We're taking Cooper Flagg, baby.
Yeah, to get the franchise changer. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
I'm not even kidding. I'm not even doing that for the show. I totally did it. Believe me.
He's everywhere.
We believe you. Doug probably tells more lies, probably just scrolling through Tankathon the rest of the show. We'll get more draft thoughts from Nata Edwards also. Then we have to go to Blowout Central, get Doug and Nata's thoughts on the 3-game, 4-game losing streak. That's still to come here, LOH. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on fourth quarter comebacks, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Also, if you want to take the under on the Hornets scoring, if you want to take the gap, going to be bigger than the 17-point spread that it is, sure, go ahead and get on FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Let's talk centers. It's not been great for Mark. The whole debacle was pretty terrible. Mark showed you something immediately after injury, then kind of a roller coaster stretch of games. Then there's been a lot more bad than good with Mark. Who knows what's going to happen with him? What I do know is I don't think if there is a real viable center option here in the draft, I don't think they're going to Donovan Clingan this. I don't think they're going to move on from that guy because they have Mark Williams on the roster. Yeah. Is there a center that you don't pass up on? And I know we talked about Derrick Queen, but one, what is your stance still on Derrick Queen? And is there another center that's like top 10 worthy in your opinion?
So let's start with Derrick Queen. Derrick Queen is not getting out of the top 7. Like, I feel kind of good about this. It's one of the reasons, should the worst case scenario happen where the Hornets end up falling back in the draft, I don't necessarily mind because I think Derrick Queen's a game changer in terms of his offense. Granted, his defensive ability is going to need to be worked with a little bit. He is going to be much more of a drop big than he is going to be a switchable big. But at the same point, his offensive game is so refined that I think you can build around him and around the skills of guys you already have. Now, that being said, I think Asa Newell is going to be the other guy. Kaman Malawach is another guy that people like to bring up. I think is a little bit more raw. I think he's going to need a lot more time. He's very, very similar to Mark Williams in that regard. The only thing is, I think you're probably going to have less of the strength concerns. But Asa Newell is much more of a switchable big. Played at Montverde, ironically, with Derrick Queen, Liam McNeely, and Cooper Flagg. Much more switchable big, is this centerpiece of basically Georgia and their bid to get to the NCAA tournament. Can score at all 3 levels, can defend, can pass. I think he's going to be really, really good. And he's athletically closer to a Chris Bosh and much more of what you want when it comes to an NBA center going forward.
What you got?
Who are the center names if they decide to trade back into the first round? And I'm talking like kind of 20 to 30 range. Not, I think we've had some questions about them trading back into the lottery. I just think that would be too expensive for the Hornets. It wouldn't make any sense with where they are right now. So what are the names, 20 to 30, where they could realistically get back into the first round and take a center?
It depends on who you talk to. I think Danny Wolf, for right now, you're seeing a lot of him being slotted in that 20 to 30 range. Danny Wolf of Michigan averages about 12-9, shoots 35 from 3, and can handle and has about 3, averages about close to 4 assists a game right now.
Ooh.
Yes, very much.
Ow.
Yeah, very much in
Let's just do this the rest of the segment. Let's just have you do sound effects.
Well, you know what disappoints me most about Danny? Well, I've looked deep into the scouting report, and this is what disappoints me most about Danny Wolf.
Uh-oh.
He's 20 years old, which means he's going to take away my ability to call him Teen Wolf. And that disappoints me greatly.
He's older than 20 years. He's older than 20. He's close. He's a senior, unfortunately.
I just wanted to call him Teen Wolf. I wanted to make all kinds of jokes about him surfing on top of cars, about him, dunking fully hairy. Like, I can't do it.
We need actual Teen Wolf to help us from this losing streak.
He's adult wolf.
We do need that. Okay, sorry, Nata, proceed.
But still, Danny Wolf is one of those guys that's going to be very, very in vogue the closer we get to draft time, because he is a 7-foot big that can walk, chew bubblegum, pass, and shoot the 3. So he's going to be there. There's a little I would say the ideal Frank Kaminsky vibes, and by ideal, I mean not a punk, can rebound, can get physical, can do a lot of different things in very different aspects. So all the ideal stuff you would want in a center or four, I would probably say is Danny Wolf. Like he can play 4 or 5. He does it right now. I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be very in vogue, and he's one of those guys I think that the Hornets will go get. The other one is Janai Broome. And Janai Broome, there is a bunch of polarizing thought because I think he's very
the numbers are gaudy. I mean, his numbers,
yes,
they jump off. So what's the sort of counter to that?
He's old. He's
old.
like 23, 24. You think he
Adult
might
Wolf.
be back that? Yes. Yeah, like he's kind of, again, he's one of those guys that if you think that he has an NBA future, and I do think he does, there's a lot of mileage on him. And I do wonder about what he does in space in terms of a big, like, do they put him continually in the pick and roll? And between that and all the lower leg injuries, I do kind of worry about what he is going forward. But if you think there is something there, like I can see a David West type career for that kind of guy. Not necessarily like 6th man of the year, what David West had, but I do think that he is a viable center option if you think you can maximize the most out of him.
You know who was also old coming into the NBA? Alonzo Mourning. You know who was also old coming into the NBA? Larry Johnson. Like, can we like if a guy isn't 18 years old, all of a sudden he's damaged goods? It's ridiculous.
But Doug, he's 23. Like that's what I'm saying. Like,
all right,
if he was 20,
that's pretty old. That's pretty okay. You got me. That's pretty. He can almost rent a car. Pretty sure he could. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he could convince me to take more money into my retirement account. Okay, that's pretty old.
I saw a stat that Oklahoma City's roster, their average age of their roster is 24 and a half.
Auburn.
Auburn's is like 23 and something.
Auburn's is older. They got a 25-year-old starting.
It was wild. No, that was a wild one. I know we try to finagle the stats to make them as shiny as possible, but that's one that got my attention, and I just had to sit on that graphic for just a second. Okay, Nata, the last couple questions here. You guess, I guess you mentioned a couple of other names that you would be targeting in the back half of this NBA draft. Is Derrick Queen the one guy you can think of that you're higher on than most? And is there somebody that you're lower on than most? Give me both of the Nata Edwards extreme examples for both.
I am lower on Kasparas Giacochonis than most. I think Liam McNeely is better. I think Liam McNeely of UConn is better. And ironically, who I'm higher on more than most is Liam McNeely. I think that guy is a Gordon Hayward that can shoot the three, legitimately shoot the three. I think he's going to end up being a borderline all-star, if not multiple-time all-star, because he's got that kind of got that kind of gift to him. I'm lower on Giacochonis because I do not trust the system that Bruce Underwood is running in Illinois, and I also think that because Will Riley hasn't been as good as he has as he probably should be in Illinois, and maybe some of this, like some of the luster came off of Giacochonis after that Duke woodshedding last Saturday. I'm gonna be honest with you. The way they made that look, the way they made him look to a degree. I'm not the biggest fan of Giacochonis. I think the other guy I think I'm a little bit higher on than most is Jace Richardson. And I think Jace Richardson, if this is one of those situations where they would have to trade back into the lottery because I don't think he's going to drop lower than 12. But if you're talking about replacing a Trey Mann, you could do a lot worse than Jace Richardson because I think he's got future 6 man. He's got future NBA starter. I think he's going to end up being a better player than people think he is.
Okay, let's move on.
Danny Wolf just turned 21, so he can legally drink in the United States, and but he still hasn't been alive for a Hornets playoff series win.
Oh no.
Yeah, nobody has.
Right there, he's right there, but it was close, but he hasn't been.
Well, Janai Broome was he barely alive? I guess, buddy, that would have been
barely.
I think he was. I think Janai Broome. Okay, is that a rule? You can't draft somebody that was alive the last time the Hornets made the playoffs.
That's a pretty good rule, but we're about to just be completely beyond that. I will say this is a great year to listen to the Ion College Basketball podcast or watch it because There in the top 15, I'm looking at the Tankathon mock draft. In the top 15, there are only 2 international prospects. That's crazy to me. Everyone else is from college basketball. So this is a great year to listen to the pod for now.
And as someone that has been watching what Nolan Trier has been doing, I think he'll end up being close. Like some team that's going to need a point guard that doesn't get Dylan Harper is going to end up trading up for Trier because he's been better than people think. He's been there was the hype of top 5, and I think he was never going to live up to that. But Nolan Trier is going to end up being drafted in that 5 to 10 range by somebody.
Let's talk about the dudes currently on the roster. Coming up next, Locked On Hornets.
Fees everywhere!
Got to get to it. Doug has not shared his thoughts on this podcast about it yet. Neither has Nata. We'll get to their thoughts on the blowout, the record-setting losing streak for 3 games, and yes, already 4 games. Didn't realize that the Denver loss was going to be a part of the equation, but nope, they already set that record too. Let's get to it. Final segment coming up soon. This episode is brought to you by Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on retirement contributions. The privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive. With Robinhood Gold, your annual IRA contributions are boosted by 3%, plus you also get 4% APY on your cash in non-retirement accounts. That's over 8 times the national savings average. The perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive your 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk, rate subject to change. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 a month for 1 year from first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to Robinhood.com/boost. Over 8 times the national average savings account interest rate claim is based on data from the FDIC as of November 18th, 2024. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Let's do it. Nata, we'll go to you first on this. People know the numbers by now. I'll just go ahead and reference them once more, just in case you don't. 3 games lost by a combined 131 points. It's a record. The Portland Trailblazers set that record in 2022 with 114. The Hornets beat that record by 17 points. I said on yesterday's podcast, it feels a little unbreakable. That is a ridiculous margin to beat the previous 3-game margin. This feels Cal Ripken-esque. This feels Joe DiMaggio-esque. I'm not even really kidding or exaggerating that. The other thing is they have a 4-game losing streak. They've lost 4 games by a combined 145, 146 points. Just thoughts. Regurgitate. Throw up all your thoughts from what you've been experiencing the last 3-4 games.
They quit. Like, that's basically it. They quit. And I will give Charles Lee some credit in he got them to play hard for a month longer, basically, than Cliff did last year. I will give him credit in that. But for the most part, I just keep coming back to the fact, and I think I tweeted this during, I think it was the Sacramento game, but who do you keep? Because if you're going to tell me LaMelo, okay, I guess. If you're going to tell me Miles, okay, I guess. But at this point, you've had, since the 41-win season, the same thing happen over and over again. And you started pairing off people that were supposedly the problem. At first, it was Terry that was a problem. He's gone. Then it was PJ. He was the problem. He's gone. Then it became Gordon Hayward. He's gone. Like, at some point, like, it becomes the 2 guys that have been the stalwarts, and they might not be the solution, but they might be part of the solution, but they're possibly part of the problem. And at this point, the culture has to change entirely. And if you're not going to change the culture at this point in the offseason, then what are we doing?
What you got, Doug?
Yeah, this doesn't shock me at all. I think when we looked at the schedule at the beginning of the season, we saw this long road trip late in a season, and we said, man, if things kind of go wrong, that's going to be extremely brutal. I think if this were year 3 of the Charles Lee experiment, I would have some indictments for the coach and for Jeff Peterson. But to me, I lay most of the blame of this on Mitch Kupchak and Michael Jordan and what they wrought on the franchise by not investing in it. You know, there's so many things that happen like 2 or 3 years prior to either a great season or 2 or 3 years prior to an awful season. Like there's things that lead up to that, things that you don't do, decisions that you do make. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm laying most of that on the feet of prior decisions that this franchise has made. And I think Charles Lee is doing the best with the pieces that he has currently available. Obviously, injury is a big factor. Obviously, being on the road, a huge factor. And I just think that we are learning something about two of the better players on this team in Miles Bridges and LaMelo Ball. And they've got to then take that information, do the best they can with it. It's going to be incomplete information because you would have loved to see what those two could have done with a healthy Grant Williams, Trey Mann, Brandon Miller. You're not going to get that opportunity. So you have to do the best that you can with the information. What did they do from what we've seen so far and to the end of the season? What are those two going to do to lift this Hornets team out of what they're doing? I think it's fair to say, well, yeah, I mean, look, they're pulling G League players from all across the league, so there have to be some fair expectations of what the team can accomplish and what Miles and LaMelo do with that. But you're looking for star players. You're looking for superstar players. You're trying to ask yourself, can you build a team around LaMelo Ball? Can Miles Bridges be a player that lifts your team up when LaMelo inevitably has to miss a game or Brandon Miller has to inevitably miss a game? These are questions as a franchise you have to answer because they're going to affect your decisions this offseason. And so, yeah, I mean, that's what I'm looking at the rest of the way. Can those two guys do something? It's not about winning basketball games. It's about putting a competitive effort out there night in and night out. And you don't lose these games by this much if that's happening.
Well, and for me, I think, look, Miles, we've given him credit for what he's done on the court all year long. This is a question about LaMelo Ball because Miles, they told you with the descending contract that goes down to $23 million a year by the third year of his deal. So they told you what they think. It's tradable. If they keep him, fine. But we know that he is supposed to be a role player. LaMelo, the question I think surrounding him is superstar potential, all-star potential, high-end starter. How do you view LaMelo? What I don't want to do is lose out on all-star LaMelo because we figured out that he can't be a superstar. We know how these contracts are based with these teams, and when you put these guys on payroll, even the all-stars get the over $40 million a year contract. So what I don't want to happen is these guys that have highly expected roles, right? With the Charlotte Hornets, who are a team that's not very talented, they're not good enough to win. Yeah, they're asked to do quite a bit on this roster. Really, they're supposed to be asked to do something a level below that. Then they go to another team, and then they thrive in the role that they're supposed to play altogether. And you know what? They're actually thriving in winning environments. Like they're actually going to a playoff system and then thriving. And what I really don't want to do, this is the number one thing that sucks most for me about being a Hornets fan, is that why does it always have to be about a player going somewhere else before then they figure it out? They can't figure it out here. It was always going to have to be a change of scenery. No. I can't do that anymore. What needs to happen is that the scenery needs to be provided here, and they need to figure out what that answer is. So LaMelo can, even if he's not a superstar, LaMelo doesn't seem to care about, I don't want to say not care about being a superstar or an all-star or whatever. He clearly cares about the game of basketball. He's a big-time hooper, but he's never had any friction with any teammate ever. Like there's not been any friction in terms of whose responsibility is it, who's the guy. So LaMelo can do whatever is asked of him in a completely fine way. What I don't want is for him to be on this contract with another team that has a winning environment. He plays his role, he facilitates, he hits open threes, and now, LaMelo's a winning player, let's get him to the All-Star game. Give me that environment here because I'm tired of seeing it happen somewhere else.
Well, some would say that his lack of friction with players is actually a knock on him, that he hasn't been able to, dust it up in the locker room and say, hey, we've got to go out and win these ball games. That's part of what we praise Brandon Miller for, is that he will get on teammates in the middle of games, that he is sort of that kind of player, that kind of personality. LaMelo is not that. Two things that I would add to what you just said there, Walker. One is that I actually would totally agree with what you said about not losing the All-Star because he's not the superstar. If he wasn't on ankle injury number 6 or 7, and if he wasn't one ankle injury away from the Hornets being stuck with a $40 million a year player on multiple years ahead and not being able to move that player.
That's fair, right? That's fair, and I think that's different, right? You're talking about now losing the injured player, not the all-star. So you know what I'm saying? Like I totally am with you. What I don't want to happen, and I think this happens with a lot of people, is, oh, well, he's not a superstar. That's what we envision him as. Got to move on. No, you actually don't. If he's too injured, now you got to move on from him because you want to cash in as much as you can on the value that he has right now. That makes sense to me. But what you can't do is you can't move off of him being the superstar or being the all-star because he's not something that's a little bit higher than that in your brain. And it's like, well, it didn't work out as originally planned. We can adapt. Like good NBA teams can have a plan B and a plan C. Nata, go ahead, and then we can end it from there.
So I agree with you not losing out on all-star. My only concern is, like, your all-stars are generally your culture changers. And if the culture hasn't changed in his tenure, isn't that an indictment on him at some point?
Or you can just find some other people that do. If Brandon Miller is the guy that's getting praised, then we can just have LaMelo not be the leader, right? Like if he's not the emotional leader, just have him pass to all the other guys. But I think the fair question is, would he be willing to do that? I mean, he had a record high usage this season in the NBA. Would he be able to adapt? I don't know the answer to that question because I don't know. I mean, I guess you could look back to that second year, when they won 40-plus games. Which is what I would say. I think we have seen his usage go crazy high in smaller samples because he hadn't played very many games.
So, but the issue is, and this is a real issue, he's making a lot of money, and that, for whatever reason, I mean, that comes with responsibilities and perceptions. And so when you're talking about a guy doing that with Brandon Miller, having to take some of those responsibilities with a Cooper Flagg, having to come in and play. So then the roles and the money become weirdly mismatched. And I think whether you think that should be a problem or not is not really the point. We've seen plenty of situations where that becomes an issue.
Fair enough. I hear that. I don't think LaMelo is one of those players because that's what it comes down to. If it becomes an issue, sure, everything you just said has all the credence in the world. I don't think LaMelo has a personality to where that becomes an issue, because if we're saying that he thinks it's an issue, he should be the guy, he should be doing the rah-rah thing with all this money, but then we're going back around and saying, actually, we don't think he cares enough. It just feels like that's contradictory. So if LaMelo doesn't care to be the rah-rah leader guy, then I don't think he's going to care, because he's great friends with Brandon. He's great friends with Miles that he's on the team now. We've not seen him have any friction with these players. If you have an indictment of him as a player for not being a leader, okay. But if he's not going to be the leader, then he'll make his money and be happy and pass to these guys while getting open shots off of it. But to be fair, it's a question that they have to ask and they have to answer. It's a legitimate question. Like, I'm not saying it's not legitimate. It's totally legitimate with him having played more games this year than he has each of the last two. And he just played 36, 37. So
look, nothing about this situation is going to be easy.
Right.
Because, again, this is not a situation that Jeff Peterson brought upon himself. He's got to answer questions that are almost impossible to answer because of the injuries. And he's got to answer questions that were derived because of decisions that Mitch Kupchak and Michael Jordan either did make or chose not to make because they were cheap, right? Like, if there were a better team around LaMelo for these past couple of seasons, these would be way easier decisions to make. But the fact is, you are one ankle injury away from, one bad ankle injury away from being stuck with that contract. That's where I keep coming back to. I'll also say this. I don't think you should make decisions based on a fear of a player going and playing somewhere else. Think back to, we keep bringing up Bob Bass this season, but think back to that LJ trade. LJ went to New York and did great things in the playoffs for that team, but we didn't sit around and go, oh man, the Hornets were stupid for doing that. No, because they brought back assets that ended up allowing the Hornets to compete for many years to come, that they would then turn around and take those assets and turn them into players that allowed them to compete in the early odds. That's what good team building is. It's about timing and recognizing what's the risk with the back injury for LJ, with the ankle injury for LaMelo, and what's the reward. How do you keep the train moving down the tracks? That's what Mitch Kupchak and Michael Jordan failed to do. I hope it's what Jeff Peterson will be successful at.
Final thoughts, Nata?
Everything Doug said. I'm not even gonna try and
that's fair. You move on from LaMelo. Give me Anthony Mason.
I wish.
Then I'll be happy.
R.I.P.
Then I'll give me an all NBA performer. Then I'll be okay.
But we didn't know that. Okay, but we didn't know that was Anthony Mason. We did not know.
But okay, give me an environment. Bob Bass earned the benefit of the doubt by doing that 4 freaking times.
Yeah.
Like earn the benefit of the doubt is my point, right? I'd be with you if we had any kind of stability, except then the other team gets the good player and we don't get anything. The Bob Bass had developed that we don't get anything. We didn't get anything from these other guys. Well, we got the first round pick, right?
We haven't gotten anything yet.
Fair. That's good.
Just wait. It's the hope. It's the hope, baby. It's
That's
the
right.
sicko. It's the hope that kills you.
In 2026 and 2027, that's when things are going to change.
Or 2025 if they decide to trade up into the lottery.
That'll do it. Nata Edwards joining us from the Ion College Basketball Podcast, the producer of the College Basketball Podcast out there. Nata, we appreciate the time, my man. Thanks as always. And hopefully we don't have to bring you on for any more losing streaks like this.
Well, I hope not to be brought on for any losing streaks, but we can talk about the draft all day.
Yeah, that's what we'll do. Doug Branson, everyhornetsboxscore.com, Locked On NBA, Walker Mail, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.